Okay, looks like we are live. All right, good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Ben Reisinger. I'm the professor of DMM 110, Introduction to Digital Media and Applications in the School of Adult Learning at the University of Indianapolis. Again, this is our final class session of our 5-week accelerated course that we have here, again, for the new Digital Media Marketing degree that is available at UIndy. And with us, as we have every week, a special guest speaker. We have Michael Yoder, and just to introduce Michael, Michael does new media or social media right now for the Spectrum Health Hospital Network, and he's also worked in the digital media marketing realm for several years in different capacities. So, Michael, thank you for being with us, sir.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Just if you could just tell everybody, it looks like we have a couple viewers as well, what it is that you actually do now and what your role is, please.
Yeah. So my official title is Social Media Consultant for Spectrum Health System. It's kind of a funny title because a lot of people think I don't work as an employee for the system, but it's a title at Spectrum Health because I consult throughout the system with all of our various service lines, our regional hospitals, and all the various entities that comprise Spectrum Health System. So it's social media consultant. And so my responsibilities are basically encompass all the social media activity that happens for Spectrum Health System. And so we've got a dozen or so Facebook pages. We have another 8 or 10 Twitter accounts, 15 or 16 blogs, Google Plus, Instagram, 3 different YouTube channels, over 400 videos, LinkedIn, and a lot of other spaces that we're participating in. And depending on the audience, we're trying to reach the goals and objectives that we have. So we use them differently in different circumstances or different cases, but we're participating in all of those spaces.
Oh, fantastic. And really, to be effective in today's business realm, you really have to have that good mix. We've talked a lot about this in the class of the new or digital media along with your traditional public relations or communications type of thing. So I think that's fantastic. So next question. So how did you get into the whole digital media thing? I know you and I have talked before, and you said you were interested in it, but how did the whole you become, you're a social media guy? How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, it started really with my involvement in business development. And so I got in on LinkedIn fairly early because I thought that using social media and specifically LinkedIn for networking purposes and to build relationships in a business development capacity just made sense. I mean, I have a background in communications. My degrees are in speech and communications and organizational communications with a minor in PR. So I've been waiting a long time for, or I always tell people I waited a long time for social media to show up because it was a natural fit.
That's awesome.
I like your pirate hat there. That's pretty cool.
That's what I was just getting ready to say. Nice hat. That is Keenan Farrell, and Mr. Farrell there is also another professor in the new digital media marketing degree at University of Indianapolis. And I saw that he was following along last time, so I invited him to join our chat group. So, Keenan.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So again, Keenan, we're talking here with, with Michael Yoder. Michael Yoder is with Spectrum Health Systems here in the West Michigan area, and he is their social media consultant. So he does several things with many different types and levels of social media, depending on what those platforms might be.
Okay.
And next to you is Janet, who is in our class. Janet has stuck through here. She is our first participant in the digital media marketing major. So that's who's in here with us today. So, all right. Next question here for you, Michael. So, you kind of got in there. But tell me this: what first rang in your mind? How did you ever think? Okay, you talked about LinkedIn and using it for connections and business, but when was the first time you're like, man, we can use this type of new communications, this type of new PR to reach out to people? What was that like for you, and how did that click in your brain?
Yeah, I think it was a steady progression with starting with LinkedIn, but then as these other other social media channels started to come up, Twitter and Facebook and all the others, it was a matter of jumping in and just realizing the possibilities that each of these different social networks presented. Twitter is much different than Facebook, and Facebook is much different than LinkedIn, and so they all have these unique advantages and unique opportunities to connect with people. And then there were a couple of books that were recommended to me pretty early on. Groundswell is one of those by Josh Bernoff and Charlene Lee, and then Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell and some of that kind of stuff. And so all of that just kind of clicked with me in terms of the possibilities and how people connect, how people share ideas, and the idea that all the Twitter, Facebook, and so on is simply layering technology on top of what's been around forever, and that we're, as human beings, we're wired for connection. We're wired to want to be in community and to be able to share ideas and communicate and that sort of thing. So it just kind of all made sense to me. So I began applying it in different ways. I began jumping in and trying different things with it, and it all seemed to work. So.
Okay, thank you. I think you kind of fell off. You can still hear us, right, Michael?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks. So, being, this is an introductory class, we're coming in right at the ground level, and students go from this class into, they dive deeper into, real strategy about how to do it, the legal aspects, the history of social media. So, what are some of your, down, to the earth, first advice to people that are really students, I would say, not necessarily people, but students that are starting to use social media for not only personal aspects and a personal brand, but maybe for the business aspects? What would be, a piece of advice you would give to them?
Well, I think it's real important to understand the difference between using social media for your own personal use and using social media for a business.
Absolutely.
When it comes to social media and what you use it for personally, there really aren't any rules. I mean, you can do whatever you want. But when it comes to business, you can't just do social media just to do it. You need to have a strategy that maps to the larger business goals and objectives. Because that's one of the great things about social media is that you can really measure pretty easily if you define your goals and objectives ahead of time before you just jump in and start doing it and then wonder, well, is this doing the company any good? And if you haven't defined any of those goals and objectives for why you're going to do social media, then it's hard to tell, because how do you know if you get somewhere when you don't know where you're going? So, I mean,
absolutely.
So it's really important to understand that you need to define those goals and objectives. You need to clearly define who it is you want to engage with, because those two things are critical in determining the types of things that you're going to be involved in, and the social networks or social channels that you should be involved in. Because I wouldn't say go out and try to do everything. I would say, first of all, you want to look at where's the low-hanging fruit. where are the people that I want to connect with? I want to go where they are and where they're having conversations, where they're sharing ideas and information, and I want to go and begin to monitor and listen, and then maybe inject or participate in the conversation and inject the company's voice into the conversation for a lot of different reasons. I mean, it could be for customer service, it could be for name brand awareness, it could be for a variety of things. So I just think it's really important to understand that there's a difference between singing on the stage at Carnegie Hall and singing in the shower.
That's a good analogy.
You know, so you can sing anything in any way you want in the shower, but if you're going to make it to Carnegie Hall, you better do it pretty well. You know, so there's preparation, there's work that's involved with all of that. Just like, and in social media, there's a lot of work that goes into it. Yes, it's free to create an account, but there's a lot of work, time, effort that goes into a really well done social media presence on behalf of a business.
Absolutely. Can you give us a success story either with Spectrum Health or another organization that you might have worked for or ran a social campaign for, and then what type of platforms did you use, and did you tie it back into traditional public relations and communications as well?
Yeah, it's funny you ask that because we're going. One of my colleagues and I were going to Mayo Clinic next month to present at the Mayo Reagan Healthcare Social Media Summit, and we're going to talk about this very thing. So last year we did a virtual press conference using Google Plus Hangout with one of our bone marrow transplant patients. So the issue was PR needed to have a press conference, but the patient had a severely compromised immune system, so we could not hold a traditional type of press conference. So, you know, we partnered with PR to create this opportunity to use Google Plus Hangout for a virtual press conference where the doctor could be with the bone marrow transplant patient, and then the media could log in via the Google Plus Hangout feed and ask questions, and you know, the patient and the doctor could answer the questions just like a typical press conference. And it worked very well. It was very successful on many levels, from a PR level for Spectrum Health for doing this type of thing. You know, in regards to sharing information about our bone marrow transplant program at Spectrum Health. It was great for other potential transplant patients that could ask questions, could also monitor this press conference, and they were encouraged, people who had been through something similar or who were anticipating something similar. We got good press from it. We got great social engagement from it, lots of views on our YouTube channel, and you can still go view that video on YouTube. If you look up the bone marrow transplant Google Plus Hangout, you'll find it.
Oh, that's fantastic, and that's why we use this, you know, for our class structure, because again, this is a live hangout. People can watch this, but then students can go back and again get the content. So tell me, how did that work with the media? Did you have to explain a lot to the media and say, okay, you guys have to have a Gmail account, to have a Google Plus account, to then, you know, log into the Hangout and things like that, you know? Or did you just have a Google Plus Hangout and give them the external link for them to watch? I'm assuming you had the media in to ask questions. So did that take some education on your part to the local media?
Well, they could ask questions, but we broadcast the Hangout, so they didn't necessarily have to have a Google Plus or Google account in order to be able to participate. So we did. You know, that would have been probably asking a little too much to try to educate the media on, and that's not a commentary on the media. That's just.
Well, no, we all understand. You know, the more steps and the more you put into the process, the more complicated it gets. But
Right. We want to keep that barrier to entry pretty low. So.
Fantastic. All right. So, I asked you about it, kind of a good campaign or something that you've done to utilize social media. So I asked, tell me this, I love asking people this, and it seems like every professional has had something of this nature, but tell me about social media fail that maybe you've done or an organization you've worked for has done, or just, something that you've tried. And again, I've done it, and I've known lots of other social media practitioners. You try something because it's new and it's different, but it maybe doesn't necessarily work the best. So can you give us an example like that, please?
Well, in terms of let me answer it this way. So with Spectrum, we really have two different types of audiences. We have our external audience, which is the community, patients, their caregivers, and all that sort of thing. But then we also have an internal audience of 22,000 employees. So we have
That's a lot of employees.
Yeah. So we have a very large internal audience. So it's more about the risk and the reward that comes with social media, and those questions that invariably businesses have to answer. Do we block social media? Do we unblock it? Do we only unblock it for certain groups of people? And that sort of thing. But then, I think that we're kind of kidding ourselves to block it through official, Spectrum computers, because what does everybody bring to work with them?
Their smartphones. Yes.
BYOD, right? Bring your own device. So we're kidding ourselves if we think people aren't accessing social media at work because it's been blocked through official channels. So, we've had to deal with some issues because we're a very highly regulated industry and have to be vigilant about HIPAA and private health information and those types of things. So we monitor 24/7 enterprise-wide any mentions of Spectrum Health, any of our senior leadership, any of our entities, that sort of thing. And so, we obviously have a social media policy, social media guidelines, those types of things. But, you can't, there's no cure for stupid. So some people are just going to do things that they probably shouldn't do on social media. And when you work for a large healthcare organization like Spectrum, that means then we have to deal with that type of thing. So it's not really necessarily a fail, but we've had a couple of issues that we've had to deal with that weren't necessarily fun to deal with, but again, it's that risk and reward, which I believe the reward is way greater than the potential risk. But you have to train people, you have to educate them, you have to equip them, you have to, establish guidelines and set up the guardrails so they know what's appropriate to share and to talk about and how to do that, and all those kinds of things.
No, that's cool. Keenan asked a question there in the group chat, and it was one, we've talked about that a lot with this class about CMS systems and Hootsuite and Sprout Socials. He asked, what monitoring tools are you using currently?
So we were using Radian 6, which was previously owned by Alterian and then was purchased by Salesforce.com a couple of years ago. And to be honest, we just weren't real satisfied with them. So we've now entered into agreement with Dell and are using a tool called BrandWatch, which I'm in love with. As a social media geek, we're able to slice and dice the information in a lot of different ways to look at things from different angles and do our due diligence in terms of monitoring as well, and listening for any negative mentions that we need to follow up on. The state of Michigan requires us to respond within 24 hours anytime we're at-messaged or someone comes to one of our social media properties, if you will, and asks us a question. we're required to respond to them in 24 hours. So we have to be listening and looking for that kind of thing. So a brand watch is excellent. Probably what tipped the scale for us choosing brand watch and partnering with Dell on that is that we get Dell as our partner, and all of their years of social media experience, and they got first involved with social media when the laptop was catching on fire. And so they had to figure out how to deal with this, with all these people complaining in social media and things like that about that issue. And so they learned early on some hard lessons, but they learned them well, and they have a really deep experience with social media, and they've used every tool out there. They have a whole division that consults on social media. They have their internal programs. Their education is called SmackU, Smack University, Social Media and Community University, but they call it SmackU, which I love. And
that's a good name.
So that's kind of what tipped the scale for us in going with Dell and BrandWatch, is just the depth of knowledge and consulting that we get along with the BrandWatch tool.
Well, fantastic, thank you. And then Keenan asked, is that a Michigan law specific for the healthcare industry, or is that by the state of Michigan? And that's a Michigan law, right? Not a HIPAA law, correct?
Right, it's a Michigan requirement.
Okay. Right on. Okay, so let me ask. I always ask everybody this. Tell us, what's your favorite social media app? What's your favorite platform and why?
Instagram.
For personal, and then for business. So personal is Instagram?
Yeah, personal is Instagram, and for business is LinkedIn.
Okay.
It's kind of a toss-up between LinkedIn and Twitter. I absolutely love Twitter. But when I got started with Twitter, I was just like a lot of people, and I said, I don't get this. I mean, I want to join the cool kids club, but I just don't get it, And then, as time went by and I got more and more involved with it, I mean, I absolutely love Twitter. It's one of my go-tos. Anytime I want to do research, anytime I'm at a conference, anytime. I mean, I just think there are so many advantages to using Twitter. A couple of 2 years ago, when my father was diagnosed with cancer, that's the first place I went to do my research. I mean, and I just typed in the type of cancer and got this great list of people I could engage with. Everybody from PhD research scientists who were conducting clinical trials to the National Association for that particular type of cancer, to their annual conference, to people with the disease, to people who were supporting people with the disease, and they're all people, because it's Twitter, they're all people you could reach out to and engage and ask questions and find resources. So I really like Twitter, and of course LinkedIn for business. Again, I think it's just an invaluable resource for business in a lot of different ways. And then, but again, personally, I really do love Instagram. I like the visual nature of it, but I like the ability to use multiple hashtags so that you can be found by more than just the people you're connected to. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that it's mobile. You can post to Twitter and Facebook from your Instagram and update those channels as well. And we use it for Spectrum. It's great for our events and things like that. So those are my faves right now.
Fantastic. No, thank you. Excuse me. So, okay, it's getting about 7:22. You've given us a really good overview, and we appreciate it. But let me ask you one final question here. So, if there's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody when they have done something kind of dumb or a social media fail, what would that be?
What to do if they've done that?
Yes, well, not necessarily what to do, but what would be your advice to them Just, as let's say they're new, they're starting out.
Just remember, the internet in general. Don't lose sight of the fact that it's a public place.
Mm-hmm.
You don't ever want to post anything that would be private. I'm not talking about personal information. I'm talking about private information, and there's a big difference. I mean, personal information is your name, your address, your phone number, those kinds of things. I mean, my goodness, the phone book's been around for 150 years, and I can find your phone number and your address. I mean, I'm not worried about that. But when it comes to private things, gosh, use a sense of modicum here, and don't vomit your entire life onto the World Wide Webs, And social media is a big part of that. And I mean, it stays out there. You can hit your delete button, but if somebody screen captured it, which we've seen a million times when companies have a major faux pas and people are screen capturing like crazy, it's not going to go away. So
Yeah.
you'd need to use some discretion, some common sense, and it's okay to be yourself. Nobody wants to talk to a robot, right? But you've got to use discretion. You never argue on social media, never. It's just important that you remember that it's public, and what happens on the internet stays on the internet, I mean, and everybody can see it, so.
All right, what'd you say, Keenan? As many female celebs recently found out with the iCloud leak, even if you don't post on the internet, someone else might.
Yeah, I mean, his advice is great, but you almost have to take it a step farther nowadays because of, the frequent usage of cloud services. That info can be hacked and someone else can post. So you almost have to be careful what you even have on your phone.
Your cloud.
Yeah.
Well, what I would say with that is because what got hacked with that not necessarily was iCloud, but was their passwords. Their passwords were so easy that they had developed some type of algorithm or whatever it was that they literally figured out the passwords for that 70, 80 celebrities. So when I tell people that, always use a number, always use a capital letter, always maybe use a pound sign, something like that. That's my advice. Michael, what were you going to say?
Why in the world are you taking naked pictures of your cell phone? Okay, I mean, come on, folks. That's part of the.
What's interesting was on Google Plus. I did notice that even both on my phone and the tablet that I'm on right now, that it says automatically saving the pictures that I've taken of like my grandkids and these kind of things. And it says automatically saving them. Well, I didn't upload them to Google Plus, so I don't know how it's even taking those. So I don't know if it's showing those to everybody or if it's just saying it's going to.
Well, it's based on the settings on your phone and your app. If you're using Google Plus on your phone, it's the settings on your phone and on your Google Plus app. And I don't know if that's the default to automatically post them to your Google Plus account, but that's where you'd want to double check and see what your settings are.
That is the new automatic default to Google Plus. That's kind of one of the things, it's Google wanting to capture absolutely everything for you. So, Jen, if you go into your settings and you say don't automatically upload photos, and you'll be just fine with that. No.
So, Janet, I don't know if this makes you feel any better, but when I look at your profile and click on photos, it says these photos are visible only to people they've been shared with, and I can't see any photos.
Oh, well, that's good.
There you go. Even to the lawyer to check all that stuff out. Yeah, right on.
I need a lawyer right now.
But they could be hacked if you have an easy password. So.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So that's why I always try to tell everybody, my rule of thumb, which I tell my students, yes, I've posted pictures of myself having a beer. Yes, I have posted pictures of myself at a party, but I'll tell you, I went through when I started my professional career, and I did a social media audit, and I was like, oh, I had some doozies on there from back in my younger, a little bit more crazy days, and I was kind of a crazy guy, and so I did delete some party pictures and things like that I just knew that weren't inappropriate, and I knew that being in this realm that people would be either Googling me or searching for me or looking for me on multiple different platforms. So I always tell everybody that too. If you've been on social for a few years, maybe you need to do your own personal audit if you haven't gone through and looked at all your photo albums on Facebook, or the 20,000 plus tweets that I have now out on there. So there you go. Any questions from Keenan or Janet there for Michael before we let him go here?
No, thanks for sharing.
A lot of good information.
All right, well, thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
We appreciate it, and if Keenan and Janet, or maybe anyone else that might watch this later, if they would like to connect with you, what's the best way to connect with you digitally, sir?
You can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, and with Twitter, it's just MD Yoder, and the same with Instagram. It's MD Yoder. LinkedIn, it's just linkedin.com/n/MD Yoder. So it's pretty consistent. I'm pretty easy to find.
Right on. Well, thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you being with us, and it was great information for everyone. And all that will conclude tonight's class. So thank you all for being with us. We appreciate our special guest and our other special guest, Mr. Keenan Farrell, for tuning in and carrying that pirate hat with him here the whole hangout. Oh, he takes it off at the very end. All right. Have a good night, everyone.